Hello and welcome to Visiting Dugout, a Fans First Sports Network production. I am Chrystal O'Keefe, and today I have my dear friend Ruth back on to chat about the Blue Jays. So it's been a little while. Please reintroduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ruth Kapelus. I am on the board of SABR Toronto, the Society of American Baseball Research News. I'm the newsletter editor. I have my own blog. I occasionally still do some baseball writing on the side, although SABR, my volunteer life with Canadian baseball and the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, tends to take up more of my time. And I've been a longtime baseball fan, longtime Blue Jay watcher. I won't say how long. I'm not going to give my age away. I probably will end up giving my age away at some point during the discussion. But yeah, really excited to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, yeah. So what is new in Blue Jay world?
Well, they had a pretty good May, in the beginning of June, I would say. I think they may have, in that Philly series, kind of started coming back down to earth. I see them without any kind of really big move at the trade deadline, being around a 500-ish team. And with the AL being the way it is this year, that might be enough for the third wild card, which they may just sneak their way back in. But I don't necessarily see that happening unless they make some big changes, which we can talk about as we go. But I think they did bring some hope to the fans for a little while. I think there was some luck involved in that, some things that fell their way, but their run differential is about minus 12, I think, again. So it's trending back to where it was before, and we'll see how the next little while goes. They've got the Diamondbacks in before the White Sox come the end of the week, and so we'll see how that series goes. But they're starting to get a little bit lean on pitching, and the bottom half of the order is starting, I think, other teams are starting to read them a little bit better. They're not any superstars per se, and I would say that our superstars are not performing as people had hoped that they would at the beginning of the season. So we'll see how it goes. We're heading into the dog days now, which is when really the wheat separates from the chaff, I would say.
Yeah, no, for sure. So going back a little bit with the off season, did the Brewers wrong B team, did the Blue Jays kind of meet any of their needs that they really needed to fill? Or I mean, how did they do?
I think they could have added another bat for sure, and Santander not seemingly getting any interest from any of the other 29 teams, I think was a little bit of a red flag. And I would say that people would say that he's performed as they hoped. But I know last season he really didn't start doing very well until the latter half of the year. It's possible that that will happen again this year. Bullpen was doing well, and I think they did make some pretty decent additions there, but it's starting to show some wear and tear. Now they don't have enough starting pitching, and I was excited when they signed Max Scherzer because everybody loves Max Scherzer, but I'm like, I don't really know how many games he's going to pitch with them. I'd hope to be more than the 3 innings that he's done so far, and I still hope that will be the case. But they needed a bit. They've been relying on durability from Barrios and Gosman for a long time, and like knockwood, nothing happens to them, but that's not necessarily the strongest strategy. So I think having another starting pitcher who wasn't 40 and frequently injured would have been a good idea. And I know they're probably hoping Alek Manoah comes back from his surgery at some point in the end of the season, but that's a big question mark as well, and not something to really base, particularly if you're hoping to be in the playoff hunt, anything on. So, and then obviously during the offseason, they didn't do the Vladdy extension. So that was something that was supposed to happen prior to the season starting. It didn't. I think they got some pressure from the ownership group to make it happen. And obviously they did get it done. But now, like, Jays fans can be very capricious, and they're already complaining. He's not living up to his contract. I'm like, it's been like 2 months. There's 14 years. I don't think you can evaluate it yet. And he's getting paid a lot of money. Good for him. Like,
That seems like such a long contract for him because he hasn't been kind of the Vlad that we knew maybe even just 2 years ago.
What a lot of people don't like to acknowledge is that some of that season was played in minor league.
Yeah.
Ballparks. And I also think that something happened with the hitting instruction because it's kind of went across the board where power got sacrificed for, I don't even know, because they weren't really making a lot more contact. So it just seemed like power got sacrificed, period. And I think if you tinker with your swing like too much, at some point it might take a while to come back, or this is who he is. And I know that they were kind of up against it and that if they didn't re-sign him or extend him and he walked, they really had nobody that any player, like no player that I think is kind of known amongst the casual fans other than probably Bichette. Mm-hmm. He may be gone after this season. So they really needed some kind of face for the team, I think. And I would suspect that was a bigger driving force behind it. They put a lot of money into renovations. They completely redone the stadium. It's really expensive to get a ticket there now, unfortunately. So not that they're trying to recoup, I would say, the investment back and what they put into renovating, but not having a completely empty stadium. Like there were times in the 2000s when the Jays really had like 20 years of middling to mediocre to dismal to almost seasons. Mm-hmm. Where it was like empty. And that is a huge stadium that looks terrible when it's empty. So I think part of it is just to make it still an event for people in Toronto, even if they're not necessarily performing well. And I would say that streak where I think they went 13 out of 15. I don't think anyone anticipated that. Like, I don't think people thought, yeah, this is a team that's going to win that many games. Like, it was definitely a fluke, and I think I could see them kind of falling back down to earth now and leveling out where-ish I think everyone expects them to be without any significant changes being made. And some of those changes, like you said, should probably come in the offseason. Yeah. And I'm not sure who they have as trade potential, really. There's not a lot in AAA. There's not, they trade too much away from the big league team, then you're back where you started anyway. But we definitely need another starter. So we'll see.
I get that because, you know, our like franchise player is Luis Robert Jr., who has not had a great season last season, not a great season for him. And so we're trying to like leverage, you know, are we going to be able to trade him at the deadline, or are we going to be able to trade him in the off season? But at the same time, when there's no production, you're like, well, who wants him and what are we going to get in return? We're not going to get anything. And this is like our most established, well-known player. You go into like the team store and it's like a Luis Robert jersey and then like Frank Thomas, because they just don't have all of these like big star players. Most of them are literal like children to me in my eyes. They look like my son. So it's been, I get it. It's tough, man.
I went to a White Sox game last year. I don't know if I should say this publicly, but I will. We paid like $9 for tickets, and I just sat right behind home plate. So I got a really good view of everything. It rained right at the end. They were playing the Mariners, and this was when they were mired in that like massive losing streak. So I was really hoping they were going to break it when I was there. They didn't. I wasn't the good luck charm. But it's like tragic what's happened to the White Sox. They had such potential, and they brought in, I'll blame Tony La Russa for that. Like, I don't know what he did, but he broke them. And he broke them like really effectively and thoroughly and in a long-lasting way, because they rebounded like a little bit and then just fell off again. Like, I mean, they're not going to be as bad as they were last season. The Rockies are trying to beat that record, I think, but they could have been so good. And it's very sad to see. And it maybe with Louis Robert, is it Robert or Robert? I never know how he pronounces it.
I'm pretty sure it's just Robert. I mean, I hear a lot of different ways, but most of the broadcasters say Robert.
I'm not sure how he pronounces it, but his production might be the fact that he doesn't have anybody good around him.
Yeah.
And if he was traded to someone that was a contender, then it may come back. But that's a lot of maybes for a team to bank on. But if you're really looking for like a little bit more pop, there may be a team that's willing to take a risk on it. But do you trust Chris Getz to be the one to make that call and bring in anyone that's going to be a value for him?
Yep, that's where we fall.
Yeah, I don't know that you can, but yeah, it's sad to see what's happened to the White Sox, and it's sad to see in many ways what's happening with the AL. Like the American League used to be very fearsome, and they are not like at all anymore right now.
No.
In general, like it's wide open for any team, including the Jays, that really wanted to try to make a run at it, but there's so many teams that feel like they're not even trying. And I don't really understand what happened with the Orioles this year. That just feels like
yeah,
something crazy and unexpected. But
that was my first question when I recorded the Orioles episode earlier this season. I was like, what even happened? And the guest I had, he was like, I don't even know at this point.
I don't think they would be able to. I don't think the team knows. Sometimes there's on paper really good teams. Like the 2017 Jays, I thought would be good. They were terrible too. And sometimes there's just teams that like seemingly should do well. They performed well the year before they went to the postseason and then just fall off. And there's so many factors that were not there. So we don't really know what those factors are. I will say when the Jays start performing poorly, the vibes around the team get very rancid. Like they really don't hide any kind of disappointment or frustration very well. And maybe that's just because I've watched them more, and that might be the case with like any team that's struggling. Yeah. When they're playing well, it seems like they're completely different human beings than when they're playing poorly. Like they don't necessarily have whatever that key factor is that's needed to like put it behind you and move forward and move forward. They just seem to get mired in these periods of just misery. So I don't know if it's going to happen again, but I could see it happening again if they keep going down this trajectory that they started in the Phillies series.
We saw that a lot last year with the White Sox. I mean, honestly, up until Pedro Grifol was fired, it was just rancid vibes and they were constantly losing. And then Grady took over and it was like, we're still losing, but it's a bit more positive. The clubhouse is more positive. I think they were just so burnt out on back-to-back horrendous managers.
Yeah.
And they were finally like, okay, well, we've got a young guy. He's played baseball. He knows what he's doing. And then, Will Venable is kind of in the same where even though they're not doing great, they're still losing a bunch of games. It's at least a bit more positive. And I will say that that's a huge thing to have. Like, you've got to have good management and good vibes, or else you're just stuck on this downward trajectory of just.
And it makes the games very unpleasant to watch as fans.
Yeah.
You feel frustration and just like that kind of, like we were talking about, vile rancid feeling every time they pan to the dugout. It's not fun to watch them. And I will say the Jays, excluding these last few weeks, for the last few years, have been very challenging to watch. They grind out wins. They've not been offensively performing the way that anybody wanted to. The pitching has always been better than I think anticipated. And it seemed like there was a switch made when they lost that game in postseason to Seattle when they came back, where they switched everything and they sacrificed offense for pitching and defense. And starting pitching wins series, and I would say strong starting pitching wins postseason games.
Yes.
But you need offense to get through 162, and you need some of those games where you're willing to sacrifice 12 runs if you're going to score 13. And that wasn't happening for the longest time. And the games were just like, they felt arduous. And I'm like, why am I watching this? It's like, it's supposed to be entertaining and it's not. I feel like I'm doing work and I just finished work. This is supposed to be my like distraction. It's work for them. It's a job for them. They weren't performing it with any kind of like enthusiasm or happiness for a long time. And then it turns you off from wanting to watch them, certainly on TV, and definitely like to go to a game when it costs so much. You want to know that you're going to get some value for the dollar. And
Mm-hmm.
for me as a baseball fan, I plan games around who the opposing team is, particularly if it's a team that doesn't come to Toronto every season, so that I have the opportunity to see them in person. But I would argue probably most people don't do that. They go to see the team there. And if it's not fun and there's not a lot of joy to be taken from it, you're not going to be wanting to spend $250 on tickets, parking, concessions for 2.5 hours of boredom.
Yeah, I'm like you though. I tend to follow players more than anything. So again, if I have a chance to go to Sox Park and see Andrew McCutchen, I'm going to spend that money.
Yeah.
Bad example because the Pirates are terrible, but like same thing. Like if I want to see Mike Trout or if I want to see Ohtani or these players that I follow and I love, I'm gonna spend the money. But yeah, just going to Sox games right now, it's not the best thing.
Yeah, if you're going to say like, I want to hang out with my friends and be outside for a couple of hours, I mean, you can do that without paying money to get interested. Yeah. But if you like having the backdrop of baseball while you do that, like we had in Toronto or in Southwestern Ontario, where I am, something called the IBL, which is the Independent Baseball League. And where I am, there's no admission for the tickets. You go to the park and just watch them. It's on city property, so they're not allowed to charge any admission for it. And so that on a Sunday, I'll go hang out with friends. We bring our own snacks, our own drinks if we want. And then you have baseball as the backdrop. I will say without the pitch clock, though, those games go on forever. Pitch clock has made a nice viewing experience, I think, from those games that used to be routinely like 3.5, 4 hours long. Now, when I go to the IBL, I'm like, oh yeah, these are too long.
Yeah, my husband, I don't think had been to a game honestly since the whole pitch clock thing was installed, and we went a couple weekends ago, and we were trying to get through this crowd and missed like probably 2 innings almost. And he was like, I forget how short these games are now, especially in person, because you're just 1, 2, 3 and you're done. And they're super quick now. And we just lost like 2 innings. And I was like, I love it. And I love it when I am working and covering, like recapping a game, but I hate it when I'm like there in person because I do sometimes just want
yeah, you can look down and then look up. And like you said, you've lost 2 innings. And most likely no one scores, so you didn't really miss anything, but it's possible that you're like, oh, I don't even know where those 2 runs.
Yeah, exactly.
I was on my phone, and now I don't know what happened. Yeah, I always tell everyone, put your phones away during the game.
Yeah.
You're going to miss stuff that happens. It's short now, especially if you've spent money to go there. You can be on your phone any other time, and you're going to like not see anything, and you'll have wasted that money. So just put them away and enjoy what's happening in front of you. I mean, it's funny what you say about going to see certain players too, because I don't know when this is going to be live, but Ohtani is pitching again tonight for the first time. So like now I have to stay up late.
Right.
Watch him to see how he does. I'm very excited. Like I'm acting like I'm like nervous for him. It's crazy. I have no relationship to this person at all. And I'm like, I hope he does well.
I get it.
To succeed. Like he's not succeeding in every other measure. But yeah.
Right. So back to the Blue Jays, and I guess succeeding. That's a good way to go. Who do you think is going to make the All-Star game for the Blue Jays? Who are your picks?
Oh wow. I would have said Dalton Varsho for sure. He's injured again. I feel like Vlad just because he's like a name and people know him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does the home run derby this year. And then on the pitching side, Barrios and Gosman, I would say probably both have a fairly decent chance of going. Maybe Yimi Garcia. But relievers are not generally like first pick, so I would be surprised. It would be nice for him. But that would be, I mean, I know it's kind of the same people every year, but it is kind of the same people every year that deserve to go. So I would be my guess. I mean, we'll see how it all shakes out come July, but potentially Varsho might be back long enough where he gets to go. He was on a bit of a tear before he got injured again. It's unfortunate. But yeah, he started off the season on the IL, came back, was hitting for power in a way that he hasn't previously, and then he was starting to like drop off a little bit in terms of like on base percentage and stuff, but he was still performing at a pretty decently high level, and then he got injured again. So that's sad for him. I just want him to be able to come back and like play well. He seems like a very decent guy, and I'm sure it's very frustrating for him to keep having these setbacks. But maybe, depending on when he comes back, he might be in that conversation, which would be very nice for him.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to go from the White Sox?
I mean, it's so tough right now. A lot of people keep saying Chase Meidroth. I don't think that's actually going to happen. I think if anything, they'll just end up sending another pitcher, and it'll probably be Shane Smith. He's easily the ace right now, which is wild because he's barely been around. But yeah, I think Shane will go, and people, again, they might vote in someone like Luis Robert or Andrew Benintendi because they know them, kind of that same whole reason with Vladdy going. But yeah, I think it might just be Shane Smith, and that's fine. He's a phenomenal pitcher.
Yeah.
So
I got to see Crochet start once.
Mm-hmm.
Sad about that for you guys. Yeah, so he was really good, and he was handsome. Not that that means anything.
I miss him. I miss him so much.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't realize he's kind of a good-looking guy too, in addition to being a good pitcher. But yeah, I got to see him pitch in Toronto when he was still with the White Sox. I don't know if the Red Sox haven't been here that much. Like, we haven't had a lot of the AL East matchups other than the Rays, who own the Jays. They always do. I don't know what it is. I thought it was the trope, but they carried that trope magic. And they still managed to just, well, they've been doing well. Like, they're second.
Yeah.
Now, and you can never count them out. But they always just seem to pop up out of nowhere and be like really good. And you're like, I don't know who any of these players are. I haven't heard of a single one. And yet somehow they're always good. They're the thorn in the side, I would say, of like all the other AL East teams.
Definitely. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will talk about what the series will look like. All right, welcome back. So it's a little too early for probable pitchers when we're recording this, because we are recording a little early. But what can you tell us about what we might be able to expect just in terms of your pitching rotation?
I'm trying to think if you're going to see, I think you'll see at least one of Barrios, Bassett, and Gosman. So they're off today. And with all three of them actually didn't have like the best starts in Philly. But if you run up against them and they're having a good start, they're pretty solid and unhittable. And if you can keep them in long enough and they get out of without going into the bullpen and taxing them, then generally I would say it'd be a very low scoring affair. The other two are kind of their bullpen games, and then Bowden Francis, who had some starts where he was like going no hitters into like the 8th inning last season. And I don't know where that fairy magic went, but it's gone. And he gives up a lot of home runs. I feel bad. I mean, you can tell, I don't know if it's a Yips thing. I don't know if it's a mojo thing. I don't know if it's that people have studied him long enough now that they know what to expect. He does hang a lot of balls, like, do get hit out pretty hard. And then the bullpen games, they've been managing. They've got Lauer and they have Spencer Turnbull, who's up now. So they've been managing to patch these gaps in. But I do think, like, when you see the Philly series and those core three who didn't perform well, it's a lot of pressure on them. They're not constantly, like, basically pitching no hitters. For a while, the offense was so poor that they just couldn't hit anything. If they didn't hit anything, like, it didn't matter how well they were pitching. So they're tough, though, and I would say against a team like the White Sox, it seems like a bit of an unfair matchup, but you never know. The White Sox have had some wins against some pretty strong teams, and you can't count anyone out. They're all Major League Baseball players.
That is true. I have to remind myself of that quite a bit. But hey, whatever, that's fine. So kind of with that, especially if we get, a Jose during this series or something, who do you think might be the biggest threat for the White Sox to go up against?
Oh, gosh. Against those three pitchers?
Well, I mean, it could be anybody. It does not have to be a pitcher. It could also just it could be an offensive threat for them.
Oh, for the White Sox against the Jays? I thought you meant the Jays against the White Sox.
The Jays against the White Sox.
Oh, the Jays against, well, I mean, honestly, like anyone lineup. That's mean, but watch, they'll get swept by the White Sox.
I know, I was about to say.
I'll look like I have no idea what I'm talking about. I don't think that there's anyone, how there's usually like one player that kind of loves hitting in a certain park or loves playing against a certain team. I don't think the White Sox and Jays have that in this era. I mean, back in the 90s when they were both powerhouse teams, there were definitely people like Bobby Thigpen and others who you're just like, wow, they just own the Jays and vice versa. But I don't think there's been, like, the White Sox have turned over the roster so frequently and dramatically that it's hard. I would say it's hard probably for any of them to get any kind of real footing against any team, and they don't play the East that often. So this is the first time they played this year. So it's hard to say. I mean, it'd be easier after they played to see if there was anyone that kind of liked it at the Dome. It's possible that it's supposed to be really hot when they're playing. So if the roof is open and it's really humid, then the balls have a tendency to fly in the Dome. So if there's anyone on the White Sox that does like to hit for power, there might be some opportunity, like environmentally and climatically, as in the climate, that can help benefit that, as long as they don't close the roof and it's not too hot. But it's supposed to be pretty humid for that series, so that might be able to help. But it's hard to say. I mean, we don't know until they start playing each other.
Yeah, that's fair. So what are the keys for the Blue Jays to take this series, just to completely win out against the White Sox?
I would say like having the starters go deep and not having the bullpen be totally taxed, because I anticipate the Diamondback series, which is coming before, to be more evenly matched and potentially having the bullpen being used more than in other series. And just for them to put string some good hits together and hit for power, they're still not like a massively power hitting team. They still give up more home runs than they hit. And I think at some point that catches up with you. And we'll see what the run differential is after the Diamondback series. But if they give up, this sounds so dumb, if they give up more runs than they score, they won't do well. Obviously, I think people understand how that math works. But, I mean, those are the key factors, is to try to have the offense be good and allow the pitching to be a little bit less perfect, which is really the key that they have to have. I mean, every single team needs that, but like in particular, the Jays need that, because they really have ground the starters down into like a fine dust, and it's in the middle of June, and there's a long season still ahead of them.
Yeah, we got a long way to go. It is only mid-June.
Yeah.
So with that, and this could even just be the same answer, like what are the fears that you have kind of heading into this series?
My overall fear, which is something that I feel badly speaking out into the universe because I don't want to like jinx anything, but is that reliability, the reliance on the durability of some of the starting pitchers, particularly Barrios and Bassett. Like, they almost never get hurt. And if one of them goes down, that changes the dynamic of everything. Like, then they're really kind of in trouble. Unless Max Scherzer comes back. But my understanding is he had a rehab start in Buffalo and he threw 60 pitches, but he felt like a little bit sore afterwards. I don't fully understand the mechanics of this injury, but apparently he overcompensates for his thumb in one of his lat muscles.
Okay.
So where he feels the pain is in his lat, and then he like holds back while he's pitching. So I hope that he's able to overcome that, but if I don't know that would be in time for the White Sox series.
Yeah.
And I think just the main thing is that they don't tax their starting pitchers the way that they have been. Like they really only have 3, and you need like 9. Throughout a season, and they have 3. So, yeah,
no,
they're doing, I would say, like remarkably well considering. But I know, to be honest, I've said this the last 2 seasons too. I'm like, pitching can't hold up forever, and it did and it didn't last year. They finished 14 games under 500, and the year before they managed to squeak into the postseason, but they lost both games against the Twins in the wild card. But you have to think at some point it's going to hit a tipping point where it can't continue like that. And I think they may be getting to that point in the year where that tipping point may be getting closer and closer. And I'd say for that, like the offense needs to be the one to pick it up. Which is obviously much easier said than done. I'm not the one standing with the bat facing 99-mile-an-hour fastballs, but that's what they do, and that's their job. So I think this focus that the Jays front office put on defense and pitching over offense clearly hasn't worked.
Right.
And it's going to come to a point where if the offense doesn't continuously pick it up, which they did, they had that good run, but it needs to be consistent throughout the entire season, then it's going to just be more of the same. And honestly, I don't want to go back to watching these like 2-1 losses constantly, because they're so boring. Even if they're only 2.5 hours long, they're 2.5 hours of like grinding boredom.
No, I get you. I am a big like pitchers duel kind of girl. I love a good pitchers duel, but at the same time, again, when I'm covering this game and I'm like, oh my gosh, will someone just score like 5 home runs and just end this game?
And I will say there's a difference between a pitcher's duel and a lot of their 2-1 losses.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds mean and like I'm disrespecting the opposing pitcher, and I'm not, but it was that the offense just wasn't performing. Like they were taking pitches that they should swing at. They were swinging at pitches that they shouldn't. They were hitting into double plays. They were hitting right at. And at some point, they're like, oh, well, we got Babbitt again and the luck. And I'm like, no, they're setting up the defense because they know where the ball is going to be hit. It's not bad luck every single time. Like, give some credit to the other team.
Mm-hmm.
You know where to position the players. And so it's honestly about power, finding the gap, being a little bit more selective with swinging. I mean, the same fundamentals as everybody, but a lot of the times the losses were poor offensive performance as opposed to like stellar pitching on the other side. And that's frustrating. If someone's pitching amazingly well, like that's fun to watch. And like something that John Schneider loves to say all the time is he tips his hat to the other team. It's something that tends to make like some segment of the fan base lose their mind whenever he says it. But it's true. You tip your hat. Like they were just better that day, and that happens. But when you're not performing well and it's the offense like not doing what they're supposed to be doing as opposed to the pitcher being dominant, that's boring and frustrating to watch. And they've had a lot of games like that.
So moving away now from our respective teams before we end this out, what are you just maybe noticing going on in baseball, or if you have any fun hot takes or any of that, like just what are you seeing, enjoying, etc. with baseball this season?
The Tigers, I'm enjoying their dominance and that they really did a rebuild in the way that you hope that a team is going to do a rebuild. And I don't know that they can maintain 600 level play for the rest of the season, but I would love to see them go really deep into the postseason because I just think they're really fun to watch. I wish Paul Skenes, who if I want to compare him to Tarek Subal, had better players around him.
Yeah.
I always feel like he's kind of like Roy Halladay with the Jays, where you have this one amazing superstar who just never got the run support and the team around him to allow him to thrive in a way that someone at that level should. But the Tigers are such a nice story. The NL being as dominant as they are is a nice story. I mean, Shohei pitching again is something that I'm excited about. There's always good baseball to watch. And the NL West is obviously like what the AL East used to be. That's a really fearsome, dominant division. But even the Central, they've kind of fallen off a little bit. And I think that the Guardians and the Royals will find their footing again. The Twins do. There's going to be a three-way battle for the rest of the season of who's going to actually take the Central Division. Sorry, White Sox. You're not part of that battle.
We know.
But I think that it's nice to see that division doing a little bit better. For a while, it felt a little bit like a rollover division. For a while, the AL East was like that. Now they started to pick back up again. Even Boston's over 500 now, although they traded Devers. We didn't talk about that.
I was about to say, you brought them up. What are they doing?
I don't know. Like, I wonder how they're feeling, the team. Like, does the team think, oh, our front office just gave up on us? Or were they frustrated with him as a player? And do they feel like, okay, now maybe we can kind of move past that ugliness that was going on and try to come together as a team and keep performing at this level? Like, everyone keeps saying that the Giants 100% won, but the Red Sox have good prospects and they have people that are coming up and that may end up outperforming expectations. You never know, but it's hard to know if this was clearly just a management versus one poor guy situation or if it was something that was impacting the rest of the team. It's impossible to know. We're not in there. But I would say that for the NL West, which is already such a strong division, to like have him be on the Giants is probably, I'm sure, very exciting. I have a friend who's a Giants fan. I should ask her if she's excited about it. I'm sure she is.
Poor Red Sox fans have had an interesting roller coaster week because they were very, very high on Roman Anthony coming up finally.
Yeah.
And then, boom, Devers is gone. And everyone I know that is a Red Sox fan is very angry at the organization about that. But yeah.
I would say the Red Sox, under their previous front office in Bloom, signed Devers out of a feeling like they had to. I would say like similar to the Vlad extension in a lot of ways. And I think as soon as they realized the team was going to take on his entire contract, they couldn't wait to get rid of him. And that's really hard as a fan if you become attached to this player who was supposed to be, came up with you, supposed to be the face of the team, was the face of the team, and then just had this contentious relationship develop in the offseason that just continued until now. I hope he thrives in San Francisco, and I hope the players that got traded thrive. I don't want anyone, they didn't do anything wrong. Right. I don't want them to do badly either. They're always collateral damage. The weirdest thing about sports is that your whole life can be upended overnight. Like, they were literally getting ready to play, and it's like, go get on the plane. Flying across the country with a totally different team now. And they're playing, I think, in like a week and a half. The Red Sox are going to be in San Francisco, so that should be interesting. But yeah, I feel for Red Sox fans. They lost Mookie Betts. Now they've lost Devers. I mean, it's hard. I always tell people, don't root for laundry. It only brings heartbreak. Like, if it's a player that you like, root for that player for the entirety of their career. It doesn't matter where they're playing, because you're only going to be set up for disappointment if you want someone. I mean, Vladdy, I think, is an exception. We'll see. I mean, will he be here 14 years from now? I don't know. Will any of us be here 14 years from now? Can't answer that either. But he would be the only, I think, I'm pretty sure, the only player to wear a Jays uniform for the entirety of their career. I don't think anybody. There's been some that have had longevity, but they ended up somewhere else, like Dave Steve and Tony Fernandez. So I'm pretty sure don't 100% hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure he would be the only one. And I'm sure that Red Sox fans thought that would be the case with Devers when he signed that extension. So yeah, so I say, like, don't root for the player, not for the uniform, because therein just lies heartbreak and disappointment.
Yeah, right now it's just me and Andrew McCutcheon against the world, but I'm going to have to find somebody new soon. I think his retirement is coming
I think it's imminent. We're going to have to find somebody new that's a little bit, I mean, he's one of a kind.
He is, yeah.
He's not replaceable, but you'll find someone else who you can root for and love as an individual, and as like a human being, he seems like as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And I hope that this last year, even if it's not as competitive as I'm sure he had hoped, is brings him what he needed for closure for his career back in Pittsburgh, and then he can move on to whatever comes next, feeling like he accomplished everything that he wanted to do. And I hope he stays around baseball somehow.
Yeah. He did just break Roberto Clemente's home run record, so I'm hoping that is part of the closure that he would like for his last baseball, professionally playing baseball chapter, I should say, because he needs to stick around in some capacity.
Yeah, I think just there's so few players that have endeared themselves in the way that he has. Like, I think Ohtani people love, and he seems very like funny and endearing in his own way, but there's that remove. Like, you don't feel like you could go to a game and ask him for an autograph or something if you were a kid. Whereas with Andrew McCutchen, you feel like if your child saw him at a game and asked for an autograph, he would do it like no problem and with a big smile. There's accessibility to superstars that I think MLB is missing, and they need to start cultivating that a little bit more, because they make it so hard to watch the games.
Yeah,
this is something we could talk about in an entirely different podcast. But the fact that it's all splintered now across media, so you can't just like turn on because no one has cable anymore. Like, you can't just go home and put it on your TV, on your radio anymore. You have to have like 17 different forms of media, which nobody can afford / want to do. It's expensive to go to a game, and then MLB blacks out the team in your own city.
Yep.
So you can't even watch your own team without paying a certain amount of money for cable, if that's what covers it. There's an RSN in your market. And they're making it so that like 10 years from now, that kids might not know who anybody is. And that's why I think the WBC is so important. But I also think like accessibility and marketing your players and just marketing the sport a little bit better. We always think, oh, baseball's dying because like X number of people are watching it. But I'm like, do you ever break down the demographics of this X number of people? Because I guarantee you they're probably not 25 and under for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're older. And there's that whole group of kids who won't get into it if there's no way for them to go to a game, for them to meet players, for them to watch it. At home, they might be playing, they might be on a team in their community, and that's the extent of what they see. Like, I was talking about the IBL before, like, it's becoming popular in Toronto because it's free. Yeah. Kids can come. It's a giant park. They run around, they bring their dogs, they play catch. Like, half the time the players are playing catch from the side of the field. It's very relaxed. But it encourages interaction and it encourages fandom. And I think MLB does a terrible job at that. They just want to wring every possible dollar out of everything. And it shows in the fan experience. And I think probably Rob Manfred considers this a future commissioner problem. But it will be a problem 5 to 10 years from now. And it'll be a big problem if they have another lockout in 2026, like after next season, and potentially don't come back for that whole season. Then it'll be really hard to get those fans back. Like, there are people who tell me that they stopped watching in the last strike and they never came back. And that was 30 years ago. So if you lose that whole cohort who don't really have to begin with, it's going to be, I would say, a problem for the sport. Andrew McCutchen, we need you to save MLB.
He's the next commissioner, Andrew McCutchen.
Yes. Can you please be the next commissioner, Andrew McCutchen?
I'm all for it. I will fully sell my soul to baseball if that were the case.
Oh my gosh. Having a commissioner who actually liked the sport would be like groundbreaking.
Why?
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
Well, that's what I've got for you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Talking Blue Jays. Please just remind people, obviously, where they can find you.
I'm on Blue Sky now. So that it's like Ruth Kapelus.bsky.com. I don't remember what just look up Ruth Kapelus.
We'll tag you, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what all the other stuff is on it, but I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I'm on Blue Sky and you can find me there. And I'm mostly talking about baseball, but a lot of times also talking about politics. So don't be surprised if you see that. But for the most part, talking about baseball.
We walk a fine line. We got to do what we can to stay sane.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you. Obviously, best of luck in this series.
Thank you, and to you as well.
All right. Bye.
Bye.